Well, hello. Welcome to another edition of Learning Live at HID Academy. My name is Rob Puricelli, and I am one of the instructional designers here at the Academy and your host for today. We're going to be talking about multi-factor authentication at HID and how we can support that with our various solutions, and also, just inform you a little about how it all works. Before we do that, and before I bring in my colleague for the day, I just want to go through a few pieces of housekeeping if I can. So first of all, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these live videos, and of course if you want to dive into the immense amount of training videos that we have on the channel. But if you subscribe to us and hit that notification bell, then you will be able to be reminded of whenever we go live on one of these things, and that's on YouTube. Of course, if you're following us on LinkedIn, hello to everyone that's on LinkedIn. Glad that you could make it, and hope you're enjoying your days. And give us a like if you feel that you enjoy this material, and of course if you know someone who would benefit from this and isn't aware of this, then please do share the link to the show or the channel with them, and let's spread the word and get it out there. During the session, you might come up with some questions that you want to ask either myself or my colleague. If you want to do that, could you preface any question in the chat, whether you're in LinkedIn or YouTube, with a large capital Q? And that way it just catches my eye and I can move it over to the question bucket, and I will pull those questions out at an appropriate time. But what we try and do is leave the questions till the end of the session, and that way we can deal with everything all in one go. If you haven't already, do please visit our page, hidglobal.com/training, where you can sign up for the HID Academy Learning Center, where you can access all of our training materials. And if you are one of our partners, you can access lots more besides. We've also got, as you're probably aware, because many of you will be watching on the channel, we are on YouTube. It's at HID Academy, and you'll find all of our video content right there. That's enough waffle from me. I'm going to bring in my my longtime colleague. We were just discussing before we came on the show how long we've been here and how long we've known each other. It feels like forever, but it's always a pleasure to welcome in Paul Hynes. Welcome to the show. There we go. Let's bring you in. How are you doing,
Hey.
Paul?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. And yeah, we have known each other for quite a while, but yeah, it's been excellent the whole way through.
Indeed.
As Rob said, my name is Paul Hynes. I am a technical trainer with HID Academy. I focus mostly on identity and access management, but I have dabbled in pretty much everything that HID delivers, from PACS to secure issuance all the way across. I have spent the majority of my time with the company definitely focused on identity and access management. We're going to be talking a lot about multi-factor authentication today. It's something that kind of came up because, as I'm talking to customers and a lot of times in the IAMS kind of ecosystem, people focus very much on one product or one solution, and kind of lose sight of the bigger picture and how everything can work together to really deliver a robust ecosystem of multi-factor authentication.
Cool. So why don't we start off by having you tell us exactly what multi-factor authentication is and why it's important.
Exactly what it is. That puts a lot of pressure on me, but I'll do my best. So multi-factor authentication is really, it's any form of electronic authentication where, in order to gain access to a resource, first you're going to be asked to give two or more pieces of evidence that you are exactly who you say you are. So people, I think, immediately jump to the idea of a card with a pin, and then you put the card in a reader, you put in a pin, and so you've given something that you have, right? Something you possess, which is a card, and then something that you know, which is a pin, right? So if you're just using username and password, that's just two instances. Like, it's still two things, but it's two things that you know. So it's only one factor of authentication. And really, there are three really recognized factors of authentication. There's knowledge, there's possession, so that could be like your card, and then there's inherence, or a lot of times you'll hear it said as like what you know, what you have, and what you are. So inherence is something that's inherent to you, like your fingerprint or your facial features for facial recognition. That comes up a lot on phones. So those are really the three recognized factors of authentication. And then there are also these kind of identifiers that you can use to scale up authentication, things like time and location. So anytime that you're using two-factor authentication, you're going to be using two of the factors of knowledge, possession, and inherence. And then you might also be including things like time, like what time are you actually accessing something? I tend to work, my 8 to 9 hours a day, and that's when I'm usually accessing company resources. If I'm suddenly accessing them on a weekend at 2 a.m., it might look suspicious. Or if I think most people who travel anyway, so I used to travel for work all the time, less so now. Everything's kind of moving online, but it used to be a problem every time I went anywhere and tried to use a credit card, to buy anything in some other country, it would be declined. And I'm like, oh, I know there's money on there. And that's because I'm using it in a location that's just weird. So kind of the same thing can happen in a digital sense where, if I always log in from the same IP address and then I decide, oh, today I'm going to bring my laptop to a coffee shop and log in, that might look weird, right, to a system that, oh, this is coming from a place where we don't normally see a login. So that's kind of what location does. It could be your geolocation, like your actual physical location in space, or it could be the IP address of your machine. So anytime that we're combining these things together, we consider that multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, I had an experience in Stockholm in Sweden where my credit card was declined. And I assume it was for that because, like you say, it was active. There was money behind it, so it must have been my location. That was a memorable evening.
Yeah, I did a trip to Mexico once, and I had to sleep in the lobby of the hotel because it took them so long to sort out my payment. They said I could stay, on the little bench over to the side until they figured it out, and I ended up having to sleep the night there. So.
Oh no. So, yeah, carry on.
I was just going to say, so this is what multi-factor authentication is, but a little bit about why it's important is that we're seeing an increasing trend of cyber attacks, right, across all industries pretty much. The number one that people are probably most familiar with is phishing attacks, where you'll get an email and it looks like it's from someone you trust, but it turns out it's just someone trying to get your information. So, if something tells you, hey, go put in your password to this website, to access your account and make sure that it's not, nothing's wrong, and then that password gets sent to someone, some malicious person, and they go and try and log in. Well, if you're using two-factor authentication, where maybe you have to, use that along with something that you have, a key fob or a one-time password or something like that, even though they were able to get your information, they won't be able to gain access to the resource because they don't have that second factor. That's really the purpose of multi-factor authentication is because the weakest link in any security system is the person. So, if you can make it still convenient to get in, but inconvenient to gain access to both factors, then you'll step up your authentication quite a bit.
Sure. Cool. So, fundamentals and the ecosystem. Tell us a little bit about that.
A little bit about the ecosystem. So when we look at the ecosystem of multi-factor authentication, we're kind of trying to look at, how do people get credentials? How do we manage things that might happen to those credentials? And then how do we, when they're presented to something we're trying to access, how do we authenticate that the credential is being presented by the person it's supposed to be presented by? So we kind of have this entire ecosystem of solutions at HID that help us manage each of those different kind of life cycle events in a credential's life. So we have the management side, where this is where we're actually getting a credential into someone's hand. As far as credentials go, there are a ton of different options for what those credentials might be. There are different things that you might access as well. And then depending on the thing you're trying to access, we're going to authenticate to it in a different way. And what we're going to do for the rest of this live stream is really look at each one of these sections: management, credentials, less on what you access, but a little bit, and then how we authenticate, and look at the products and solutions that HID has that help facilitate these different parts of that card lifecycle.
Gotcha. I'm just looking through that diagram now, and I notice that there isn't a line going from buildings to how we authenticate section. Any reason for that?
Yeah, so I mean, technically, we do have ways, obviously, to authenticate into a building, but that's mostly going to be physical access control. So I think because I focus more in my mind on identity and access management, physical access control is a huge, big, important part of the multi-factor authentication ecosystem, because a lot of these credentials that we're giving are multi-technology, right? So even though we're focusing more on contact chips and mobile credentials and things like that for accessing networks or workstations, those same credentials can be used to access a building. But the thing making the decision about who is or isn't allowed in is going to be an access control system. So it's kind of just outside of the scope of what we're talking about.
Sure. Cool. Okay, so credential management systems.
Yeah, so let's start on the management side. So we'll start with credential management systems. And for HID, the big one to talk about is the HID credential management system, very aptly named. And what this essentially does, this is when I was talking about the life cycle of a credential. What we're really trying to do with the credential management system is guide a credential through its entire life cycle. So we, after we've established who a person is, and this is something that kind of happens outside of the actual product, but it's part of the entire life cycle, is that you want to sponsor, you might have to sponsor someone, enroll them into your system, vet their identity, whatever processes you put in place with that. They're more human processes, but things like the credential management system can give you tools to make that, to make it more regimented, I guess you could say. But really what we're doing inside of CMS, the credential management system, is we're creating a profile for someone. We're issuing a credential of some sort, and that could be a mobile credential. It could be certificates on a chip on a card. It could be a key fob or something like that. But we're creating the digital representation of that and loading it onto a credential for them. They can use that credential then to authenticate to like the user portal and if they're having an issue with their card and they need to change their PIN or whatever, they're going to use that credential we've given them to log in. But really, I think the most robust part of it after issuance is really management. So a lot of things can happen to a credential, right? So I use cards mostly in my explanations of things because I think everyone can envision it really easily. If you're issued a card, there's a lot that can happen to it, right? You could forget it at home when you come to work, right? And so you have to have a workflow in place for, I've done it. I've forgotten it at home when I flew to a building in another country where I needed it, right? So you have to have something in place that's going to manage that the workflow of that instance, that life cycle, moment. Cards can be stolen, they can be damaged, they can be lost, right? So you have to have ways to either, give people temporary credentials, reset a credential when someone's forgotten their PIN, update, when you change your security measures, you need a way to push an update to a credential that exists. So one of the things that CMS does really well is you can kind of schedule an update for the next time someone presents their credential. So you can say, the next time that the credential, gets put into the system, we're going to update the certificates on it or whatever it happens to be. You can make it so that if a user loses their card, there's a workstation in the building where they can go and they can log in using, knowledge-based authentication or something like that, and just report that they lost their card at this workstation. And that could trigger an event for, a security officer to come down, issue them a new card or whatever it happens to be. And then obviously, at some point, maybe someone leaves the company and they take their credential with them, especially, in different parts of the world, there's different standards for that, but in some parts of the world, you don't have to give back something that contains your personally identifiable information, right? So if your picture and name and address maybe or whatever it happens to be are printed on the front of a card, you don't have to return that to a company when you leave. That's your personally identifiable information. But on the digital side, they want to make sure that card can't be used anymore. So there has to be a way to revoke access on a credential independent of having the credential physically there with you. And that's what CMS really does, is it goes through that entire life cycle of creating an account for a person, giving them a credential, allowing them to use that credential for different things like encrypting emails or signing documents or accessing their workstation, whatever it is that they need to use it for, and then also managing those life cycle events.
Sure. Cool. So that's the life cycle of a credential from sort of front to end. We're going to be talking a lot about certificates. That's something that comes up a lot in this. So tell us about certificates and the authorities that issue them.
Yeah. So anytime that you're talking about two-factor authentication, it's hard to get away from talking about certificates. Technically, there are types of two-factor authentication like one-time password and things like that might not be certificate-based. But a lot of multi-factor authentication credentials will have a certificate that's issued by either a public or a private certificate authority. And so there are a lot of options for those at HID. We have IdenTrust, which is kind of like this a public certificate authority that can issue certificates that come from a trusted source. And then there's also the option if you need like a private certificate authority where you could still use PKI as a service and then get access to kind of a certificate authority where you don't have to do a lot of the management side of it, but you still have access to the abilities of a certificate authority. What just as a big high level, what a certificate authority does, you can imagine that if you want to trust something, then it has to have been given by a trusted source, right? So if I put a certificate onto a card and I'm going to be logging into my workstation has to be able to say, okay, well, where did that certificate come from? And do I trust where it came from, right? And so we kind of inherit trust down from a certificate authority, which is just at some point you have to say, I'm going to trust this. And so if it issues a certificate, I'll inherit that trust. I'll trust the certificate authority. And if it's my own private certificate authority, we just make the decision that we're going to trust it. If it's a public certificate authority, then same thing. You still have to make the decision that you're going to trust it, but there's more that kind of goes into it. And so when we're actually issuing like a certificate of some sort, there are also all of these different standards that are used by different, web applications and things like that you might have to be compatible with as well. So if you're using your own certificate authority, because like Windows has the ability, you can just set up your own certificate authority and trust the certificates on that. But then the moment that you need to use that certificate outside of your own network, there's all kinds of standards. You have to make sure that your certificates are written to the right standard, that they're trusted, et cetera, et cetera. So by using a PKI as a service, something like IdenTrust or like a private PKI as a service, you're taking a lot of the burden off of you having to set things up properly and using a service where it's kind of already done for you.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, the irony is that there's multiple standards, and I always thought a standard was this one overarching thing, but there's lots to be considered, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, especially like so. I mean, if you're working in purely a Microsoft environment, it gets a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. But the moment that you start looking at a lot more things are going to the cloud now, and so there's some things where you might have a credential and it works in these 5 systems, but then you also need access to these systems, and so there's multiple ways to do that. You can have multiple credentials on your card or your device, or you could have a certificate authority that's just trusted across these different standards.
Excellent. Okay, So that's certification. Let's talk about the credentials themselves,
Okay.
because there's obviously lots of different types. And
Yeah, and we're gonna spend, I think, a little bit of time here, because there are, like you said, lots of different types, right? So when we start talking about credentials, like I said, I tend to focus on cards. There's probably two reasons for that. I came up really focused on cards, right? I started with the company with a product in the secure issuance side called Assure ID, and it was all about printing on cards. Then I started doing a lot of training on physical access control, and that was at the time it was all cards. So cards is kind of like that's my baseline. But there are even among HID's card offerings, there's a lot of variety, right? So we have both for physical access control, there's both high frequency and low frequency. So if you're, when you're approaching a customer, for instance, and you're trying to figure out what credential is right for them, you have to start thinking of the uses of that credential. And cards are just very flexible, right? Cards can be used for access control. They can have both contactless technology and contact technology. When you start getting into the newer series of cards like Crescendo 3000 or the Crescendo 4000 line, you start getting access to FIDO, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Pass keys are kind of the way of the future. The logical access authentication ecosystem is moving towards passkeys. So we'll talk about passkeys in just a little bit. But if you want a kind of a streamlined path from getting to your chip and pin based logical access to something more passkey based, then Crescendo cards give you that pathway, because we have compatibility with like FIDO 2.0. We have compatibility still with your access control systems, so you don't have to upgrade all parts of your ecosystem all at once. You can use a card to kind of get you there. On the other side of things, with Crescendo, we also have Crescendo keys. So these are, again, you're taking away that physical access control side, right? You've got, this is just something that's obviously meant for a workstation. But we still have that access to FIDO, right? So what FIDO really is, because it's what people are going to be most focused on, I think. And actually we're just going to scratch the surface of FIDO, because it's a big topic, but there is an excellent training at HID training, global.com/training on our learning management site. There is an excellent explanation of FIDO and how it works kind of in a physical access and logical access world. Is put together by a colleague of ours. And it's an excellent primer if you really want to wrap your mind around FIDO. But because you're going to keep hearing me say FIDO a lot, it's not a dog. It is.
I'm trying to resist the jokes.
Yeah, I know. Well, we have a cell phone company, or we used to up here I'm in Canada. We had a cell phone company called FIDO, and when FIDO first started coming out, I was confused. All the time I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to go online. I'm going to just search FIDO." And I wasn't finding what I wanted, but it stands for Fast Identity Online, and it's a standard for authentication, and it's based on the same concept of public key cryptography. So the same thing that we're using certificate authorities to load keys onto a chip on a card. It's based on that same kind of philosophy of authentication, but it's got built-in support via browsers. It supports a wide range of different devices. It's super easy to use, and it's resilient to man-in-the-middle attacks, right? So it's phishing resistant. When I'm trying to explain FIDO to someone who's like not in the industry, what I usually use as an example is I use iPhones. I'm an iPhone guy. I started with iPhones, and then I have so many games on there that it's hard to switch over to Android. But anytime that I want to access my credit card or my banking account, or if I want to use Apple Pay for something, it uses my face, right? So it uses facial recognition, and it's very, very quick, right? So if I want to buy something with my phone, I tap the little button on the side twice. It pops up a picture of my credit card. It makes sure that it recognizes my face, and then I just pay. Right? I didn't have to. I didn't have to go and say, okay, well, I'm logging into my credit card, so I got to put in my username and my password and all of that. That is happening, but what's happening is that I've already authenticated to my phone, and my phone supports passkeys, right? And so, Apple's part of the FIDO Alliance as well. And so what's happening on my phone, when I'm trying to access my bank account, it's just using my face. It's still sending my username and password somewhere in the background. But first, what it's doing is it's using a private key. It's making sure that this is the device that I registered this on, that this is the facial recognition, right? So it's using two-factor authentication. It's using something I am, and it's using something I have to authenticate that I'm the right person who should be presenting my card for Apple Pay or whatever it happens to be. So it's still using two-factor authentication, but in the background, it's also securing that with public key cryptography. So it's just a really secure and super convenient way, right, to use two-factor authentication.
Cool.
Another thing that kind of falls off a lot when we start talking about things, because FIDO's not just HID. Obviously, I was just talking about Apple phones, right? But same thing when I'm logging into my HID Approve app on my phone, I have to authenticate using my passkey first. So really, the benefit for passkeys is that it's still combining something you have with something you are or something but it's stored in the cloud, and it's attached to your device, so it can be either device-based or cloud-based, because you can have passkeys that you access through your browser, for instance. And again, your machine that you're logging in with becomes the something you have, and then you'll be either using something you are or something as your second form of authentication. And that just makes it really phishing resistant, right? Because it's attached to my device. If they get my you see in spy films all the time, and it doesn't work like this, but you see in spy films all the time that they take a picture of a fingerprint and then they hold it up to a scanner to get in or whatever. They couldn't take a picture of my face and then hold it up to their device to log in. It has to be my device, and it has to be my face and what have you. And then I just mentioned HID Approve. So this is another credential. It's a mobile-based in that it's an application on your phone. It requires you to log into your device in order to use it. But this is another form of credential that's considered out of band. So what essentially happens is you'll have a authentication platform of some sort. And we'll talk about those in just a little bit as well. Hopefully we don't run out of time before that happens, but I do tend to ramble. So you have an authentication platform that you're trying to log into something, right? So maybe I'm trying to log into a cloud server somewhere. And when I try and log in, I put in my authentication, my username and password, whatever it happens to be. And the authentication platform sends a message out to what's called a push notification broker. And that sends a message over to my phone. Right. Now on my phone, I get the notification on my phone that a login request has been requested, and I can either approve or deny it. I will obviously have to have logged into my phone first. So you're getting that two factors of authentication in that you're trying to access a resource maybe with username and password, but it's making sure that you have access to and can log into the device that you registered. And it's called out of band only because your phone isn't present in the ecosystem that you're trying to log into. It's outside of it, and it's sending a message back to it. You can kind of think of it. It's similar, although it's like a step up from if you've ever had. You're trying to log into a website, and it tries to make sure you are who you say you are by sending you an email with a code, and you have to type in that code. Yeah. That's also out of band, right? It's taking something that it knows that you have access to that no one else should, and it's using it to send a second form of authentication. Sure. But HID Approve is a much more streamlined way to do that works with our authentication services.
Okay, so there are all these different types of credentials, but How would a customer decide which of those credentials they wanted to use? Are there any guidelines to this kind of thing to help them decide?
Yeah, so I mean, the guidelines kind of come back to you have to sit down with a customer and you have to talk to them about, what is it that they are going to be using these products for, right? So like, what are you going to be gaining access to? Do you need to access things that are in a cloud application? Then maybe when you're talking about your certificate authority, you want to be thinking about a publicly trusted certificate authority because it's, if you've ever gone to a web page and and it says, hey, the certificates on this web page aren't trusted, right? That comes back to what we talked about with the certificate authorities in that at some point you have to say that you trust something. And built into your web browser, there's already this list of trusted root certificate authorities, right? So if you use something like IdenTrust and a smart card to log into your computer and to authenticate to web applications, then it's going to trust it right away. But like someone might not need that, right? So they might say, hey, the only thing I need is a way to log into workstations, and they just have to be trusted in my own internal network. I don't need them to use that to authenticate to some cloud service or to log into Facebook or access Amazon or whatever it happens to be. So if you just need that, maybe a key fob's the right answer for you, right? So you use one of the Crescendo keys, and it's still something you have. They have to have it with them. They'll put the key into their laptop. They'll put in their PIN. That's their 2 factors of authentication. And they'll get in and gain access to your own internal network. Right, and then maybe you're using PKI as a service for a private network. If you're going to be doing like you can see in the picture for HID Approve on that last slide, the example was major bank, right? So like a banking application, something that's super convenient for their users to prove they are who they say they are at the time of a transaction, like HID Approve is excellent in that kind of a space because it's very, very quick. Literally, you can see on the screen there's like a little approve with an arrow. So, if you want it so that, when they log into their bank account, they get a little message on their phone, they just have to swipe their finger. When I log into my bank account on my computer, I have to put in my username and password. And then a lot of times it'll send something like a text message to my phone. And then I'll type in that on the computer or whatever. And that's convenient and it's secure, but it's not as convenient as like HID Approve, where it's just like a swipe. And HID Approve, you have to have that authentication platform, but the Approve app itself, you just download on the App Store, right? So you download it for Apple or whatever it happens to be. So it's kind of like you don't even have to buy a credential in that case if all you're doing is approving 1 or 2 actions or something like that.
Sure.
But again, if you need to use your credential for opening a door, then you have to start thinking probably about cards or mobile credentials or something like that. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but it's mostly that the form benefits the function. So how you're going to be using the credential will lead you to kind of which credential is right for each customer.
Sure. Okay, let's move on to authentication. There's different services that can do the authentication. So let's look at those.
Yeah, so I'm going to pause on this screen for just a second. So you can see under what you access, we have 2 options there. We have computers, like portable devices, applications, things like that. And then we have networks. So typically for logging onto a network, you're going to be looking at some sort of an authentication backend, or if it's a Windows-specific network, it might be using HID Digital Persona. But in order to give access to the different types of credentials, you also need some way to read them, right? So you need, if you have a card and you want to present it to a computer, then you have to have some sort of reader to do that. Now, for HID, the answer to that is OmniKey readers. One of the big benefits of them are that they support all of the relevant operating systems, so like Linux, Mac OS, Windows. They're certified with all of the standards, like for compatibility across the world, right? So it's something where you can get an OmniKey reader, you can plug it into a Windows laptop or a Mac laptop or whatever it happens to be, and it'll recognize it right away. But also, there's a ton of different form factors. Again, form kind of benefits function, that you can choose the one that works best for you. So, like the top one there that you see on the screen, that is a contact only reader. The only thing it's going to read is a contact chip on a smart card that you put into it. Whereas that second one, the blue one there, that is contactless. But that means that you could use a card, you could use a phone with NFC. You have a lot of different options for the form factor. Same with that bottom one. It's like just a different form factor of a contactless reader. So you have a couple of different options there as far as how you actually introduce the credential to a workstation. Obviously, if you're using a Crescendo key, the key is its own reader, right? You plug it in through USB. There's a little button on it, so anytime you want to kind of send the login request, you click the little button on the device, and it'll send that in. Ask for your PIN. You'll log into a workstation. But if you're trying to authenticate to more than just a workstation, maybe you need a card reader, because that card is also used to access a door reader and whatever it happens to be. Some laptops do come with built-in readers, and the thing with those is that a lot of times, if I have a Windows laptop and it has a built-in reader, you can't really guarantee what industry standards it's going to be compatible with, things like that. For the most part, you'll probably be okay if you're in a Windows-only ecosystem. But if it's at all a concern that you're going to be accessing, cloud applications or things that might not just be strictly using the RESTful API that Windows kind of supports, then it's good to get a reader with kind of a more robust amount of compatibility.
Sure.
On top of readers, then you have to kind of decide what's making the decision about whether or not you can get into a system. So Windows by itself. So when we start talking about digital persona, I'm gonna stick with Windows a little bit. It deploys on Windows specifically, Windows, Azure Active Directory, or like a lightweight directory service server. But what HID Digital Persona really does is it combines the ability to use two-factor authentication that already exists with kind of the inheriting some sort of a complexity from other types of factors of authentication. Because like when you think of where you are and when you are, like so time and location, they are factors of authentication, but they're not, you can't just use them by themselves, right? So it wouldn't make sense to say, oh, I'm going to log into Windows with my IP address and what time of day it is, right? Those two things don't tell the system anything about me. So anytime you're using those, you're kind of stepping up authentication. You're saying my three factors, something are or have, that tells me who I am. But you can then combine those kind of native Windows functions. So Windows can already deal with those three factors of authentication, and HID Digital Persona lets you also use these other inherences of where you are, when you act, things like that. Mm-hmm. And the benefit to Digital Persona as well is just it's got a huge, robust support for different types of credentials, from like one-time passwords, smart cards, security keys, contactless access cards. So if you get a contactless reader from OmniKey, you can log into your workstation using contactless. There's been a couple of solutions, I think, in the past that have attempted to do like contactless logon, but Digital Persona makes it just super straightforward and easy. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a Windows-only ecosystem, Digital Persona is a really nice way to kind of, give yourself a really streamlined access to some of these more secure forms of authentication that Windows doesn't natively support, right? And it also gives you support for things like FIDO, for PKI, for Oath, which is just an open authentication standard. If you want to use mobile ID or Bluetooth devices for logging into workstations or accessing network resources, HID Digital Persona is just a really great way to do that. Someone in the chat is saying that they have this, and We should speak. Okay. All
Absolutely.
right. Well, Jim, if you don't already, I suggest that you get an account with. Go to hidglobal.com/training. We have a forum there, communities, where you can interact directly with us as trainers, ask us things, talk about different products and services with other learners as well. So if you go to hidglobal.com/training, join the communities, and yeah, we can chat, or you can always drop us a line at our email address at training@hidglobal.com. Both great ways to get in touch with us. Absolutely love the comment, and
Yeah.
love to speak with you.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed.
So, on top of HID Digital Persona, I'm just looking at the time. I think we have about 5 minutes of our planned 45 minutes. So, there are other authentication platforms as well. And this goes to, if you want to kind of step things up a little bit in size. So, we have two core solutions in the authentication platform suite. One is the Active ID Authentication Appliance. And what Authentication Appliance lets you do is really, in a granular way, decide on the type of permissions someone gets based on, what they're gaining access to. So it kind of, you can kind of think of it like this: like if I want to access my bank account, maybe I use a username and password, and I log in, right? That's one option. Maybe if I log in from my phone, it says, oh, you know what, you're logging in from your phone, and we want you to also use your Face ID, whatever it happens to you. Maybe it thinks phone is less secure than laptop for some reason.
Yeah.
And then maybe once I'm in the bank account, it says, oh, you want to do a money transfer? Well, if I do a money transfer of $500, it's like, okay, well, you logged in and you did your money transfer. That's fine. But if I want to do $50,000, maybe it says, okay, we want more authentication now, right? So an authentication platform lets you be more granular about, if the user is doing something at X amount, we're happy with, card and PIN. But if they're using it at, this much higher amount, well, we're happy with card and PIN as long as they're in a trusted location and it's during regular business hours or something like that. So the authentication platform, something like the Authentication Appliance, lets you be much more granular about those decisions about when certain types of authentication are needed. The Active ID Authentication Service it's kind of more geared towards certain verticals like healthcare, I'm trying to think here, like government, like things like that. So higher education, things like that. So it is, it's the same sort of thing. You're going to get a much more robust and much more granular decisions about your authentication decisions, but it is streamlined towards, bigger businesses, certain verticals like healthcare, aviation, things like that. There's a lot of great information on the HID Global website about the authentication service, but it's really one of those things where you're going to want to get in contact with an HID salesperson, talk about the specific scenario that you're creating authentication for, and they can help guide you towards, whether it's Windows only and digital persona makes sense, whether Authentication Appliance makes sense for your situation, or what if you want to go with something more robust like the authentication service. Sure. I think that pretty much brings us to time, but obviously if there are any questions, let us know, and I'm happy to answer anything that I can. And anything that I can't, I'm happy to get back to you with an answer. So I'm very good at not just BSing if I don't know something.
So yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, if people want to get in touch with us to discuss anything that's been covered today, you can do so either by emailing us at hid.global, training@hidglobal.com. There's the address on the screen there. Or probably the best way to do it is to come and join us over at the HID Academy Learning Centre which you can sign up for at this address, and you can also access the platform from there. And we have this brilliant new section called Communities, where our entire Academy team are there. I think we've pretty much got like 24-hour global coverage with the amount of people that we have around the world. So there'll be somebody there who can answer your question, and if we can't, we promise to go and find out. We have had a few questions come in anonymously, so let's just bring these in. I didn't see any mention of visitor management systems, which are part of the Identity and Access Management Services portfolio. Where do they fall into the MFA ecosystem?
So this sounds like it probably came from someone who was on another webinar that I did that was similar to this, because yes, I did mention them in that, but it was a little bit longer than this. So visitor management systems are they're an important part of the IMS portfolio for sure, and we've got a couple of them depending on kind of the size of the business that you're looking at and what sort of capabilities you want for visitors in your building. But a big reason that it doesn't really come up in a presentation like this is because a lot of times if a visitor is coming to your building, you're not enrolling them in any kind of multi-factor authentication. You're just giving them a visual indicator that they're a visitor in the building. Sure. Now, that's not always going to be true, and visitor management systems like the HID Visitor Manager or like SAFE or even Easy Lobby, they do have some capability to issue credentials to visitors that do have multi-factor authentication. It's just more of a rare occurrence, I think.
Yeah, sure. There's another question. So I'll take this one. I think we're going to have to draw things to a close.
Okay.
So what happens if a user loses access to their mobile device? Because this is one of the concerns. Plastic cards, we can deactivate them, reissue a new one. But a mobile phone is obviously a lot more complex device. What happens in that instance?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, they're probably going to cry because if you lose your phone, that's that's a bad day for anyone. But no, the most immediate thing is that they're not going to be able to access the resource that was required, and this works for HID approved. It's also the same thing if you're using your phone. Using passkeys to access your bank, or using, NFC in your phone to open a door, whatever it happens to be. So the most immediate thing is obviously they're going to lose access to whatever it is that they were originally gaining access to. But in an ideal world, the phone is locked down, right? So you have a PIN to get into your phone. You might, even if you use your PIN, you might still need to use your face to access certain resources, right? So in order to use HID approve, you have to have two-factor authentication access to your phone, sort of thing. So sure. Once you've logged into your phone using your face, you're able to use HID approve to approve a thing. So as far as security of the system, it shouldn't be a big deal. But also on the other end, you do have the authentication platform where you can deactivate that credentials access to things. So especially if you're using Active ID Appliance or the Active ID authentication service, they are both they're both fully compatible with HID approve. And in the appliance, for instance, you would just go to the person's profile. Once they said, "Hey, I lost my phone," you go to the profile and you would either pause or delete the entry for their HID approved, so they wouldn't be able to use it to access it. So if someone, if their identical evil twin shaved their goatee and used their phone to access things, you could still deactivate it on the server side if you needed to.
Sure. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much indeed for that, Paul. That's all the time we have for questions today. But don't forget, if you want to get in touch with us and ask us any questions about anything that you've watched today, maybe you're watching on catch up because you're in a meeting somewhere and you wanted to come back to this, then please do. You can email us at training@hidglobal.com, or you can join the communities at the HID Academy Learning Centre, and you can do that by visiting hidglobal.com /training. If you've got your mobile phone with you, there's a little QR code that's just appeared right up there. You scan that QR code, it will take you to the HID Global Academy page, or the training page, where you can access the Learning Centre. So you can scan that in there, pause the video, and then you can restart it once you've captured that. The other one, and I've just changed the QR code there, that's going to take you to our YouTube page, which maybe some of you are already watching on, so apologies for that. But if you're watching on LinkedIn and you fancy having a look at our YouTube page, then scan that QR code just right there, and that will take you to our YouTube page, where we've got loads more of these live sessions that we've run over the last year or so, and of course loads of other content, how-to guides, and lots of explainers and all that kind of thing. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the channel. That will help you get notified of any upcoming live sessions. We will be doing some more of these for sure, so please do subscribe and ring that notification bell, and you won't miss them. And thanks to everyone that's been watching on YouTube and on LinkedIn as well. Paul, as always, it's a pleasure, never a chore. Thank you so much indeed for sharing that knowledge with us today. And
thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure.
I just realized the sun's coming up over to the side, and I look like I'm going to burst into flames any moment. So well, maybe it's a good time to end this.
And this is the thing: the sun is setting here in the UK. It's getting more dark, as you probably noticed. But yeah, thank you again, and look forward to seeing you soon. And to everyone else, thanks for watching. If you're watching live, thank you very much indeed to everyone on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you're watching on catch up, then thank you for coming back. And like I said, don't forget you can subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss anything else. So until next time, thanks ever so much for watching. We'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks.